Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting of Council. I'll start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we live, work, and gather on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people, specifically the Temiskaming First Nation. We recognize the presence of the Temiskaming First Nation in our community since time immemorial and honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory and uphold and uplift their voice and values. Call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Your Worship, thank you. All members are present.
Awesome. And approval of the agenda. I have a draft motion in front of me. Be it resolved that City Council approves the agenda as printed. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Ducharme. Discussion. All in favor? That motion's carried. A declaration of the special council meeting. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores declares this meeting a special meeting of Council in accordance with Section 9 of the Procedural Bylaw number 2023-022. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Peltier-Levin. Seconded by Councillor Whalen. Discussion. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6A, which is new business, and it's the presentation of the 2023 municipal operating and capital budget. Steph?
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, and everyone attending in person and virtually. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the 2023 budget for the City of Temiskaming Shores. Tonight's agenda will proceed as follows. So we will begin with an outline of the budget review process. Then we will present the operational budget with a year-over-year comparison, summaries for both general and environmental services, the key changes and pressures to the budget, a few of the 2022 operating statistics. And then we will move on to the capital budget, including an overall summary, capital by cost center, key highlights of the major projects, and then we will demonstrate a few property tax scenarios, frequency distribution, as well as tax rate comparisons. And then we will conclude the presentation and provide some recommendations. So immediately following the 2022 municipal election up until the beginning of this year, the management team has been reviewing and preparing the city's 2023 operating and capital budgets. As we continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic in a very high inflationary period, the main goal when preparing this budget was to remain fiscally responsible while maintaining existing service levels and ensuring our critical infrastructure needs were addressed. With the 2022 annual average CPI inflation rate at 6.8%, which is at a 40-year all-time high, and borrowing rates for 2022 being more than double than they were compared to 2021, this budget was challenging to say the least. The operating and capital projects were reviewed closely and were prioritized based on immediate needs, end of life, internal capital replacement plans, funding opportunities, and savings due to partnerships or joint projects. Following the internal budget deliberations, the Corporate Services Committee met several times to review and discuss the preliminary budget. The following recommendations were made by the Corporate Services Committee, which will be addressed within this presentation. So recommendation number 1, to provide additional details and obtain more accurate estimates for landfill expansion and Albert Street reconstruction projects. Recommendation 2 was to consider reducing borrowing for capital projects. And recommendation 3 was to prepare tax impact scenarios and frequency distribution on the median residential property. As we prepared the annual budget, some key assumptions were taken into consideration. We assumed maintenance to existing service levels. We included increases associated to contractual and legislated obligations, as well as inflationary increases as applicable. Management also took into consideration historical trends, as well as expected future usage and requirements. So the estimates, of course, are based on information available at the time that the budget is established. Next. So this chart shows a quick visual as to how our operational expenses compare to last year's budget, and they have been broken out by main concepts. So note that there's an increase to the municipal operations, as well as police and social services, which means there are less funds available to transfer to capital projects. The environmental services and financing categories remain similar to last year's budget. Next slide. So here's a summary of the general operations budget. So before we begin, I'd just like to note that the negative figures in the variance column represent an unfavorable change and an increase to the budget line. A positive figure means a favorable change or savings to that budget line. I will provide explanations for the key variances from the 22 to the 23 budget, which are represented by letters in the far right column. So 3 different scenarios have been prepared: a 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 increase to the tax levy. These increases change the bottom 2 numbers of this chart, which are the general taxation and the transfer to capital. All the other numbers in those 3 columns are the same. So we'll start with note A. So even though the overall change in this line is not significant, there are some material changes that should be highlighted. It's expected that the liability insurance costs are going to decrease by $40,000, which is a favorable change. Manulife benefit plan costs are expected to decrease by $35,000. Strategic planning expenses and funding have also been included in this line, and they're expected to offset each other. The cemetery operations are unbalanced, and the cemetery reserves are depleted, so the net expense there is $31,500. The provincial offenses net revenue apportionment was decreased by $135,000 to align with our pre-pandemic allocation, and based on our preliminary reviews of the 2022 POA finances, we're anticipating next to no net revenues available to be apportioned within the district municipalities. Several factors have affected revenue generation and collection related to POA, and based on recent communications with our POA partners, several other sites are actually in the same financial position as we are. So as next steps, the department has been trying to secure a meeting date with the POA Advisory Committee, and a letter will also be sent to the ministry. It should be noted that the POA revenues that are currently incorporated in this budget are at risk. So for note B, so it should be noted that this line includes public works and solid waste management, and the increase in this line is basically split between the 2 departments. So for public works, we have included an increase for fuel, parts, and maintenance. This does, however, remain lower than the 2022 year-to-date actuals. The majority of this increase is due to inflationary price increases. As for solid waste, so the new landfill operation requirements in accordance with the environmental compliance approval resulted in an increase to the landfill operations contract. The most notable increases within this contract are due to the requirement for additional staff, movement of waste bins within the landfill, and additional snow removal requirements because of a larger road network. This increase is using the assumption of a July 1st opening date. The collection of refuse and recycling costs have increased by 6.1 CPI rate per the contract. And the additional expenses to solid waste management are partially offset with expected increases to provincial funding and diversion program revenues. We also assumed a 2% increase to the waste diversion fee, so the annual fee would go from $36 to $38. Note C, transit. An increase to the transit budget has been included. The execution of a contract with a new provider means that certain expenditures have increased and have been broken out. Estimates were quite difficult to project due to the lack of data on fuel and maintenance costs. The Transit Committee is committed to explore additional revenue generation and funding opportunities. Note D is policing. So the OPP Municipal Policing Bureau has provided the 2023 Municipal Policing Annual Billing Statement Package. The municipality will be seeing an increase of 10.8% or $241,000 for municipal policing. For Note E, Health and Social Services, an increase of 7% to the Temiskaming Health Unit fees and an increase of 0.5% to the DSAB fees have been included and approved as within their respective budgets. Note F, so not much change there, but just to highlight that we continue to apply a portion of our Ontario Community Infrastructure funding to offset all the principal and interest costs associated with the 21-22 roads program, and those were approved in the 2021 budget. Note G, our Ontario Municipal Partnership funding, that was increased by $126,400, which is in accordance with the 2023 allocation notice. And for Note H, so in-year assessment growth is projected at 0.21% or $2.4 million in 2023. This is not net of any reductions to the current assessment values. So for example, demolitions, reclassifications, or any appeals. And just a few other general notes. So the statutory benefits were adjusted in accordance to the 2023 guidelines, and those are within several lines of this budget. So they're associated with the wages. The OMERS pension plan, also within several lines of this summary. So as of January 2023, part-time employees are eligible to join the OMERS pension plan. So those contributions were adjusted in their respective departments to reflect the new enrollments. And in terms of staffing, so we did see 2 additional positions which were included in this budget. So the recreation budget included the addition of a temporary part-time head lifeguard for 1 year at an estimated cost of $8,600, as well as a full-time receptionist position at the Pool Fitness Center for an estimated cost of $28,000. So these positions will create efficiencies and provide coverage for other positions within the department, and we're anticipating that the head guard position will help generate additional revenues by allowing us to offer additional swim programs, and this will be evaluated during the 1-year contract. Another 2. One more. Yeah. So this summary here is the environmental services operational budget. So So within this budget, the biggest change was due to an increase of $195,000 to maintenance and repairs to water mains, hydrants, valves, and an increase of $62,000 to treatment facilities operations and maintenance as a result of contractual obligations. The increase has significantly reduced the funds available to be transferred to reserves. And the additional funds generated from the assumption of a 2% increase are being used towards capital projects, which are proposed later on within this budget. The operating budget also includes a number of purchases or projects which have been recommended to enhance or improve service delivery, and in some cases were identified as necessary for day-to-day operations. So within the 2023 budget, management have recommended $663,000 in operating projects or purchases across 8 cost centers. The detailed list has been provided in the full council package. And this slide here, I thought it was a good addition to the budget presentation, just to show that we do offer a very wide range of services within the city, and we do track some of those statistics. So this slide is a very small sample of some of the many departmental highlights. So those are a few of the 2022 stats that we pulled together. And this wraps up the operating budget. So before we move on to capital, were there any questions?
Thanks, Steph, for the detailed presentation. Any questions from council? No? Okay, thanks. I guess we'll move on to the capital budget then.
Okay. So as we know, the capital assets represent a significant portion of the city's budget, and it's important for the city to maintain and renew those assets, as well as invest in new capital projects, infrastructures, and equipment. Not only will these benefit the city and residents, but they're also going to ensure that we're able to maintain our service levels and create efficient workflows. In 2022, we did continue to experience pressures related to supply chain, as well as demand for contract workers as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this has impinged on the city's ability to complete certain of the projects prior to year-end. Therefore, some of these capital projects will be carried over from 2022. The unspent capital funds budgeted in 2022 will be carried over in 23 with the associated projects. So those projects are highlighted in the tables presented in the next few slides. And just a side note that a summary of the current debt as well as the reserve and reserve fund projections were also distributed with the council package. So the first table provides a combined summary of all the 2023 capital projects. The proposed capital requests total $9.8 million, 4.2 of which are carryover projects. So following recommendation 1 and 2 of the Corporate Services Committee, we were able to reduce total borrowing costs by approximately $723,000 or 17%. And this was done by deferring costs associated to future year capital works and by obtaining better estimates on capital projects. Next slide. So the pie chart here represents the proportion of funds used for capital projects. So approximately 46% will be coming from internal resources, such as city and reserves, and approximately $54,000 from external sources, such as funding and borrowing. So they're almost half and half. So over the next few slides, I will show the recommended capital projects by department. A detailed list of all the projects and descriptions was provided prior to the presentation for review. So for the purpose of this presentation tonight, I'll provide an explanation of the projects with a budgeted value greater than $500,000. So for fire and emergency management, the 3 projects presented here are fully funded through the fire equipment reserves, and there's no additional impact to the city. And I'd just like to provide additional information regarding the washer, which I highlighted in red in the slide. So an updated quote for an NFPA washer extractor has since been obtained, and the total cost will be adjusted to approximately $12,000. We do have sufficient funds in the fire equipment reserve to cover the difference in the cost. Next. So for the corporate services department, we have 2 projects which are both carryover projects from last year. There's no additional impact to the city for these 2 projects. So for public works, 60% of the total cost of these projects is funded by various sources of provincial and federal funding, reserves, and transfer from operations. There are actually 4 large projects within this section that we would like to break down as they exceed the $500,000 threshold. So the first one is the landfill site expansion. In 2022, Council, can you go to the next slide, please? Sorry. In 22, Council approved the New Liskeard landfill expansion as a multi-year capital project totaling $4 million, with $3 million being budgeted in 22. The construction commenced in October of 22, and it's anticipated to be completed at the end of the summer of 2023. The completion of the new landfill consists of placement of asphalt, construction of landfill storage building, waste storage bins, and the installation of the scale. The updated total cost of the landfill expansion is estimated close to $3.5 million, excluding the closure of the Haileybury landfill site. So the 2022 year-to-date expenditures are approximately $2.2 million, with the balance to be carried over and completed this year in 23. Capping of the Haileybury landfill is anticipated to be completed in 2024. The Grant Drive Extension Project. The Grant Drive is located behind the Temiskaming Square in Diamond. This is a carryover project which consists of the construction of an extension to Grant Drive, which would provide better access to current and future development in that area. The 2023 work will include completion of the paving, finishing touches, landscaping, and the cost associated with 50% of the turning lane or the intersection in agreement with the Ministry of Transportation. The roads project. So this consists of road rehabilitation work, which was identified and prioritized according to the asset management plan and the pavement condition index. For example, rehabilitation includes either milling or pulverizing the road surface to allow for a fresh layer of hot mix asphalt to be placed, and the modality depends on the road structure and the function. Next one. So the Albert Street Reconstruction Project. So this slide here shows a few pictures back in 2013 and a recent picture in 2023. So this project is included as part of the Public Works and Environmental Recommended Capital projects. It has been prioritized for full reconstruction and has been shovel-ready since 2018. The overall condition rating is very low at 1.0 across all segments and for all assets, except for a 155-meter section of asphalt installed in 1985. It should be noted that there's no storm infrastructure for 415 meters of this road, which causes issues with rainfall mitigation, runoff, entrance drainage, and erosion. All the surrounding streets have been upgraded to include catch basins and buried storm pipes, except for Albert. The aging infrastructure is failing above ground with spalling, fatigue cracking, and poor drainage, and the underground infrastructure has required significant attention with patching and maintenance as the life of the asset has been greatly exceeded. Both the sanitary and water mains were installed in 1923, which brings them to 100 years old. The Albert Street water main does not meet the provincial standard for depth, which means that the water main is too close to the road surface, allowing the frost to penetrate and completely freeze it. Since 2004, there have been a number of water breaks and completely frozen water main events, which are estimated at $125,000 plus labor and other additional costs. Albert Street between Bruce and Georgina is one of the last connecting links to the Stato path. Since 2018, the project estimated cost has increased by more than 50%. The project costs have been broken out into 3 departments: Public Works, Environmental, and Recreation, and are being presented as a multi-year project. Okay, next slide, please. So year 1 is estimated at $3.4 million, and year 2 at $1.2 million, for a total project cost estimated close to $4.6 million. Staff are proposing that the project be funded by a combination of federal gas tax, OCIF, capital levy, reserves, and borrowing. Next slide. So for the Recreation Department, all of the proposed projects within this department fall under the $500,000 threshold. So I won't go into details on those. And there are no borrowing requirements for any of these projects on the list. So property maintenance, again, all of these proposed projects fall under the $500,000 threshold. The Haileybury Fire Station is a carryover and is the only project to require long-term borrowing, and this was all pre-approved in the previous budget. So fleet, we have 2 requests within the fleet. These 2 assets were identified to be replaced as part of the replacement plan or due to having reached their end of life. Transit. Okay. So both of the transit projects are part of the ICIP funding plan, and they are fully funded through ICIP and provincial gas tax funds. So for the environmental department, so the environmentalist portion of Albert Street reconstruction is included here. Aside from Albert Street, there's only one other project in this department that will require long-term borrowing, and this was pre-approved in the previous budget. All other projects are funded through reserves and/or the capital levy. And this concludes the capital portion of the presentation. Are there any questions on any of the capital?
Any questions from Council? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, thank you. Not to you, but through you, maybe for Steve. I see that we still got water meters on the capital at 50 outstanding meters. How many meters were there to begin with?
So there was approximately 500 meters, give or take 10 or so, that was originally approved back in 2022. 50 never did get installed as a result of lack of contact with the property owner to have Neptune go in and do that installation, or we needed to do some repair work so we could shut off curb stops and such to have some water control for them to do those meters installations. Thus the carryover of approximately 50 meters.
Yeah, you're confident we can get them all done, because it also takes administration time that, you know.
I'm confident we'll be able to get the 50 meters installed. They did install 450 last summer, so 50 meters in conversations with Neptune will only take them about a week to install.
Good, thanks. And my only other comment, Steve's probably tired of hearing this one, but, you know, we got landfill in there again, and I really believe we have to start to treat the landfill as a business. Rather than operating based on what our costs are, we should be operating based on what our forecasts are, and if it means increasing our demolition fees and that, then we certainly have to take a look at it. That's my only comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Any other questions or comments? Is there any items we're looking for more clarification on? Councillor Belcher-Living.
I just have a question, like about when we're reconstructing a street. Is there a strategy or what's our position on burying electrical wires as we're reconstructing the street, if at all, if any?
So I guess each utility owner, it would be their decision as to whether they want their utilities buried underneath our roadway. We haven't been requested at this point in time from Hydro or Bell to bury their services. I think it would be a lot of additional costs associated with having those services buried. It would not definitely be borne by the taxpayers of Temiskaming Shores. It would all be the utility owners that would have to request that.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions?
Mayor LaFerrier.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Quick question that I should have asked earlier in the operational part. In regards to the POA, Stephanie, I wonder if you could expand just a bit on why that we're seeing those revenues quite a bit lower.
Steph, did you understand the question?
With provincial offenses?
Why the revenues have been not as we've seen them before?
Yeah.
So in 2021, the city did enter into an interim agreement with the ministry to transfer responsibilities of the Part 3 matters. So at the time that this agreement was made, we did not know what the impact was going to be to the city, nor did we receive any transitional funding to assist with this 2-year pilot. So as a result, we've seen an increase to our expenses for the prosecutor without seeing the sufficient offsetting revenues. We continue to see delays in collecting the associated revenues. We were unable to convict Part 3 matters due to COVID regulations, so this did limit the amount of collectible fines for the city. Also, we were not able to hold trials in absentia, so that means we're unable to convict again. We have since resumed holding TIAs, so we're hopeful that we're going to see some additional revenues coming in, but at this point it's too early for us to know what it's going to look like.
Great. Thank you for that explanation, Stephanie, and excellent work on the report. All of you. Thanks.
Any other questions for Steph? No? Okay. Well, Steph and to the management team, I just want to say thank you for all of the hard work that was put in to the budget. I know tonight we're going through the presentation and the overview, but I know that from the time the first budget started to where we are today, there was a lot of time, work, and effort put in. And the one thing that really impressed me was the teamwork, where you all came together and focused on a few projects that we could really bring to fruition. And it's nice to see everybody working together, focusing on, how we can improve, our community and live within the constraints that we have. So thanks for that. I do have a number of motions that are related, to the budget. Steph, did you want to go through some other things first before we? Yes. Okay, sure.
Yes, if I could.
Yep.
I did prepare a few tax rate scenarios and frequency distributions, and also a comparison of our tax rate in relation to other municipalities.
Perfect.
Okay. So this chart here, this chart shows how our residential tax rate compares to other municipalities. I selected municipalities that were comparable to our size or provided similar services, and a few that were close to Temiskaming shores. So something to keep in mind is that a municipality with a lower assessment base could potentially have a higher tax rate. But we are on the lower end of this chart here, so this is great. And those are 2022 residential tax rates, including the education. So next slide. Okay. So the following tax scenarios were prepared with the median residential property, and I did prepare some scenarios for the average commercial property. So the median residential property in Temiskaming Shores is valued at $192,000. So what would an increase mean for that property? So an increase ranging, a tax levy increase ranging between 2.5 and 4.5%, plus an increase of 2% to water sewer rates would mean an increase between $78 and $129 annually, or between $6 and $11 a month. So on the next slide, we calculated using the same assessed value and tax rates, but this time here we're showing the total taxes levied instead of just the change to the property. So next slide, please. Okay, so the scenarios were also calculated on the average commercial property, which would be valued at $280,000, $280,743. What would an increase mean for that property? So again, an increase to the tax levy ranging between 2.5 and 4.5%, plus an increase of 2% to water sewer rates would mean an increase between $66 and $142 annually, or between $5 and $12 a month. So again, on the next slide, we've done the same as we did for the residential. Now we show the total annual property taxes instead of just the change for the year. So for the next two charts, we've used the modeling tool available on the ministry site to show the frequency distribution of an increase to the levy. So please note that these charts have been prepared with the information we currently have in the system and may be subject to change. Also, these charts do not include any user fees such as water, sewer, or waste. So the first chart here is using the 3.5 increase to the levy. So lower assessed properties between $300 and $235,000 would see an average tax increase of $58 for the year. So this represents 77% of the city's residential properties. 628 out of the 3,541 properties are assumed to be vacant lots, as the assessed values are less than $50,000. 21% of the residential properties are assessed between $236,000 and $469,000, those can expect an increase between $100 and $200 for municipal taxes only. And we do have 2% of our residential properties that have an assessed value greater than $472,000. Their increase will be somewhere between $200 and $700 for the year. So the second chart is using a 4.5 increase to the levy. So this chart here shows how the impact would be distributed differently amongst the residential properties. So properties assessed between $300 and $179,100, which represents 52% of the properties, would see an average increase of $59 for the year. 42% of the residential properties are assessed between $180,000 and $358,000, and they can expect an increase between $100 and $200 for municipal taxes only. And 6% of the residential properties have an assessed value greater than $359,000. Their increases would be somewhere between $200 and $500 for the year. So to conclude the presentation, I'd just like to add a few additional comments. So the Government of Ontario establishes the province's assessment and taxation regulations, and for 2023, property assessments continue to be based on the January 1st, 2016 values. So the Ministry of Finance has not made any announcement at this time regarding the next update to property assessment values. And our projected in-year growth for 23 is lower than the previous year's growth, and it actually excludes any reduction to current assessed values. So 3 scenarios were presented in the 2023 draft budget, 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 increases to the tax levy. The capital budget that we presented tonight assumes a 3.5% increase to the tax levy, which represents 1.11% decrease in the transfer to capital, so a decrease of $113,000 compared to the prior budget. So our recommendation tonight would be to increase the tax levy by 3.5%, incorporate a 2% increase to both the water and sewer rates, and increase the solid waste fee by $2. So the proposed increases are lower than the 6.8 average inflation rate, and they would allow us to transfer enough funds to capital to proceed with the proposed capital projects. So we're seeking recommendation from Council on the tax levy, the water, sewer, and solid waste rates, approval of the temporary head guard and full-time receptionist positions at the Pool Fitness Center, as well as approval of the budget in principle to be adopted either this evening or April 4th regular council meeting.
Thanks, Stephanie. Any questions for Stephanie? Seeing none, I do have a few motions that I'd like to present. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby acknowledges the presentation of the 2023 operating and capital budget. Can I get a mover, please? It's Councillor Foley, seconded by Councillor Ducharme. All in favor? Sure. Yep.
I have a comment, and I don't know exactly where to put it, so if this isn't the right time.
Yeah.
As we were reviewing the capital projects, I just have to bring forward, there are a few under recreation that were part of the active transportation plan that was paid for by the city, and the recommendations were laid out, and there were some certain projects that were like for the first 5 years, and we seem to not, to be like falling behind a little bit on implementation implementing some of those. So I don't know when, but if there's a way to find $285,000 somewhere, that would help us help. My understanding is to help more children actively transport to school. It's the sidewalk on View Street, the active transportation path from Lorette Street to Saint Michel, and a paved shoulder on Shepherdson. So I just, I agree with everything. I feel like if we don't at least discuss this somewhere, that there's a risk that these recommendations will never make the top priority. And this is the safety of children, their health, which has a more long-term cost benefit, and also for climate change. So if this isn't the right time, but I had to bring these forward.
Sure, thanks for your question. And maybe Matt or Mitch, I'm just wondering where those items would sit. If not done this year, I'm just wondering what kind of conversation or discussion was had, during the budgeting process.
Thank you, Mayor LaFerriere. In our discussions, we highlighted these projects for inclusion in the budget for the reasons that Councillor Peltier-Living mentioned, to help with our students who are going to school, some of the segments of the population that live here that are most likely to walk or cycle to school. You've seen the numbers provided. There are tough decisions to make, and these are some that didn't quite make the cut, but for sure, in my opinion, these are important projects that we need to consider as we move forward for inclusion as per our active transportation plan. We certainly don't want to fall behind, understanding that I'd say that we have lots of tough decisions in all areas of the city to make, and it can be difficult, and we certainly have some robust discussions amongst ourselves before we bring forward something like this to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Councillor Peltier-Living. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on to, I do have another motion in front of me. Oh, I guess we should vote on this. All in favor? That motion is carried. I have a draft motion in front of me. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to incorporate a 3.5% increase to the tax levy within the 2023 budget. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Seconded by Councillor Foley. Discussion? All those in favor?
No, I do.
Sorry, Councillor Peltier-Living.
So again, it's if there was a way to do 3.51 to find that $285,000, I could just wonder when we can discuss the priority as was mentioned.
Right. So I guess when we're talking 285,000, just to equate that, basically $140,000 is a 1% increase to our tax levy. So we would be looking at adding 2% to the tax levy. So instead of 3.5%, we'd be looking at a 5.5%. So back to the challenging, pieces, of it is how do you prioritize, and just listening, the conversations are being had, and those items, are definitely, they're not lost. They're definitely, on the list, and we want to move forward. It's just, where do we balance things out?
Sorry, when I did my own calculation, it was 3.5 something rather than 5.5, which would exceed the budget, the high proposition. Yeah, I had it more like at $6 a month per household, which I thought was more reasonable.
Yeah, well, a 1% tax levy, if you look at the math, will generate $140,000. Okay.
1% is 141,228.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns?
Mayor LaFerriere?
Oh, yes, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion earlier about approving this, whether we approve it now or we approve it next week. Is there any interest in that to have further discussions around these points, or I'm just putting that out there?
Yeah, if you would like more time, Councillor Wilson, we can definitely, bring this back at the next meeting. Just anybody else have any? Sir, Councillor Whalen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm comfortable with 3.5%. We have to realize that the ratepayers are facing the same pressures that the city is. As far as delaying it for a week, we could do that. I'm a big fan of having our budget passed before the end of December. That allows staff to start going out for bids and whatnot. So the longer we do wait, the further down the list we end up on any of our tenders. So just keep that in mind.
Sure. Amy?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Just to elaborate a little bit on the deferred projects and really anything that's already established in any of the master plans or things like that, we are constantly trying to leverage funding dollars or look at ways we can accomplish those projects. So having it in the list of projects, even though it's deferred, if something does come up in terms of a funding program that fits, we will definitely try to leverage that and bring it back for a recommended action. It just is unfortunately did not make the cut on the 2023 budget for this year.
Thanks, Amy. Councillor Ducharme?
Yeah, there we go. And I was just thinking that there was some funding discussed at a recent meeting that fits some of those that hasn't happened yet, but that the city's looking at, I think, that might hit some of those projects because it is in the plan. From my standpoint, what I felt was important when we went through this process was the city was really good at giving us an idea of how much expenses were increasing because of contractual obligations. And we could see that being almost 5%, I believe. And then knowing that, what voters told me in the process of the election was we wanted to make sure that some capital projects were getting done, that people felt that they were we were losing ground. And so that was the other piece that we looked at very closely. And so we could keep moving forward and maintaining projects. But I do think that's a good question about what the process looks like and just in terms of transparency. I know you're all having very good discussions about what projects come forward and which ones have funding attached to them, but maybe we can have some bigger conversations just about what that process looks like going forward. So we're not just having them at this point, that we're seeing that everybody at the table, and I think Committee of the Whole will help that, everybody at the table sees all those conversations that happened before we got here. I do think that 3.5% strikes a balance, trying to have some empathy for those who are struggling with their personal household budgets, while also trying to make sure that capital projects are moving ahead, and that we're really adequately funding the services that we value in the city. So I'm comfortable with 3.5% today, but I really appreciate the comments that you brought forward, Nadia. Sorry, Councillor Pelletier. I'll get used to that eventually.
Awesome. I'm still trying to get used to it. So any other comments? Okay. So we do have a motion in front of us, and just ask all those in favor. And that motion is carried. I have another draft resolution. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to incorporate a 2% increase to both water and sewer rates within the 2023 budget. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Graydon. Seconded by Councillor Peltier-Living. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to incorporate a $2 increase to the special tax levy for enhanced program under the City of Temiskaming Shores Solid Waste Management Program, Bylaw 2014-072, within the 2023 budget. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved, the Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to incorporate a full-time receptionist position at the Pool and Fitness Center at an estimated cost of $28,000 within the 2023 budget. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Thanks, Councillor Ducharme. Discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. I have a draft resolution in front of me. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores agrees to incorporate a part-time head guard position for a period of 1 year at an estimated cost of $8,600 within the 2023 budget. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Foley. By Councillor Ducharme. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. And I have a lengthy resolution now, resolution number 2023-001. Whereas staff presented the 2023 municipal operating budget to Council at a special meeting on March 28, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby adopts in principle its 2023 municipal operating budget estimates, utilizing a 3.5% increase to the municipal tax levy as follows. General government, $2,708,434. Policing, $2,470,208. Health and Social Services, $2,926,297. Fire and Emergency Management, $520,093. Economic Development, $297,038. Recreation, $1,657,122. Property maintenance, $614,249. Public Works, $4,198,337. Transit, $314,087. Library, $402,566. Capital financing, $928,827. Our OMPF funding is $3,328,800, and our net municipal operation totaled is $13,708,458. And further, the Council adopts in principle the 2023 environmental operating budget estimates utilizing a 2% increase as follows. Administration, $1,338,672. Sewage treatment and collection, $991,409. Water treatment and distribution, $1,916,743. Capital financing, $670,257 for net environmental operations of $917,081. And can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Graydon. Seconded by Councillor Foley. And please don't ask me to repeat that. Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. I have a draft resolution in front of me, resolution number 2023-000, whereas staff presented the 2023 municipal capital budget to council at a special meeting on March 28th, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that council hereby adopts in principle the 2023 general capital budget estimates as follows. Corporate services, $300,000. Fire and emergency management, $28,800. Public works, $3,692,194. Recreation services, $664,385. Property maintenance, $982,351. Fleet, $503,580. Transit, $70,000. General capital project total, $6,241,310. And further, that council hereby adopts in principle the 2023 environmental capital budget estimates as follows. Environmental projects, $3,601,182. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Whalen. Seconded by Councillor Pelche-Living. Discussion? All those in favor?
Mayor, sorry,
yes.
maybe just an amendment to a number?
Sure.
So for the fire and emergency management capital budget, so we did highlight a change to the cost for the washer and extractor, going from $5,000 to $12,000. So that means the budget estimate for fire would be $35,800.
Okay. So that's $35,800, and we would add another $7,000 to the total. So $6,248,310. Thanks. Councillor Whalen, are you okay with that friendly amendment?
Yeah, I'm good with that friendly amendment.
Councillor Pelche-Living, awesome. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. And that brings us to adjournment. Be it resolved that City Council adjourns at 7:02. Oh. Sure, Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry to interrupt. The last email I got said there's going to be an increase of $4,662 to the airport levy. Are we dealing with that separate, or it says it's not in this budget, so...
Okay. Maybe just, the question is with regards to the increase for the airport?
I think we could wait until we pass it, like the final approval of the budget, or we could add it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. It's just a footnote to the email that we got, so I didn't know if we were missing it, or but it's not a great amount. So.
Right. So maybe we'll address it at the next meeting, Councillor Whelan. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. And the formal passing of the budget bylaw will be April the 18th. So we'll make sure we've incorporated all of those changes. Okay. So So be it resolved that City Council adjourns at 7:03. Can I get a mover, please? Thanks. Councillor Ducharme, seconded by Councillor Foley. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We're adjourned. Thank you.